The Royal Lodge, the 30-room residence of Prince Andrew and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson, has sparked public outrage over its lavish grandeur and the prince's right to live in such splendor on a Crown estate property.
The gates of Royal Lodge slammed shut, locked tight like a secret nobody wants to admit. The lights inside that massive 30-room Windsor mansion, completely dead, like the life that once filled those halls just disappeared overnight. And the woman who spent 2 whole decades living there without paying a single cent, gone. No goodbye, no statement, not even a simple wave. One day she was there, the next, she vanished like she was never part of it. This is the story of Sarah Ferguson's final, brutal chapter at Royal Lodge. A story packed with status, power, and a fall so public it shocked even the people watching closely. She had everything: title, protection, privilege, and still lost it all. Not in one explosive moment, but in a slow, painful collapse that played out right in front of everyone. Piece by piece, it all slipped away until she was left with nothing. No home, no brand, no title, not even a place to truly call her own. And the wildest part? The royal family saw it coming way before the public even caught on. So now you gotta ask, how does someone live inside a Windsor mansion for 20 years and end up basically homeless at 66? How does a woman who proudly called herself part of the royal tripod, yes, her own words, end up quietly moved out under darkness, face hidden, destination unknown? Stay locked in, because by the end you'll see exactly how it all unraveled, and why the palace staying silent says more than any statement ever could. Because this wasn't just a fancy lifestyle, it was something most people can only dream about. To really understand the fall, you first gotta see just how high she was living. Royal Lodge isn't some cozy vacation spot or a small hidden flat. It's a full-on 30-room mansion sitting deep inside Windsor Great Park.
The British royals have had their pick of lavish palaces and castles to call home, but now Prince William and his family are leaving their London mansion for a more rural cottage.
One of the most exclusive private estates in the entire UK. We're talking massive grounds, royal-level history, and serious prestige. Even the Queen Mother herself once called it home. By every standard, Royal Lodge is elite. One of the most desired addresses in Britain, and Sarah Ferguson was living there without paying anything. Her ex-husband, Prince Andrew, had a 75-year lease on the place at a rent so low it almost didn't matter. It was basically symbolic, like being handed one of the Crown's best properties for next to nothing. And when Ferguson moved back in around 2008, more than 10 years after their divorce, she wasn't paying a single bill. No heating costs, no maintenance, no staff salaries. Everything was covered through royal systems most people don't even understand. The kind of bills that would crush a normal person. Completely handled. And she lived like that for over 15 years after the marriage ended. Think about that for a second. A divorced woman, no longer an active royal, still waking up every day inside a royal mansion, walking historic grounds like it was normal life. She even justified it by calling it the tripod. Herself, Andrew, and their shared role as parents to Princess Beatrice and Eugenie. It sounded convincing, almost heartwarming. 2 people staying close for their kids, putting family first, keeping things stable. She talked about it like it was something noble. But here's the part nobody was really questioning back then. Was that the full truth, or just a story that kept them both living a lifestyle they couldn't afford alone? Because once you start looking closer, the timeline starts raising serious questions. Was the tripod really about family?
Sarah's Trust, the charity Sarah Ferguson, has announced it will close for the foreseeable future.
Or was it a smart excuse to hold on to power, comfort, and status? And while all that was being said publicly, something way darker was building quietly behind those mansion walls, something that had been growing for years. Back in 2010, photos surfaced of Prince Andrew visiting Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted offender tied to serious crimes involving young people. That connection had already made the royal family uneasy, but everything exploded in 2019. That's when Andrew sat down for that now infamous interview on BBC Newsnight with Emily Maitlis. An interview that quickly turned into a total disaster. He struggled to explain his relationship, gave answers people couldn't understand, and completely failed to show empathy where it mattered most. People couldn't believe what they were hearing. It became one of the biggest public relations failures in royal history. And through every headline, every wave of backlash, every shocking revelation, Sarah Ferguson stayed right there beside him. She defended him. She appeared with him. She didn't step away, even when pressure was building from all sides. And that raises a serious question. Why would someone who worked so hard to rebuild her image tie herself so tightly to a situation falling apart in real time? She had spent years writing books, supporting charities, rebuilding her public identity. So why risk all of that? The answer might be deeper than it looks, because later it came out that she also had past connections to Epstein, something she had reportedly tried to keep quiet for years. Suddenly, her decision to stay close didn't look so simple anymore. Then came the moment that changed everything. October 30th, 2025, when King Charles made his move. And it wasn't small, it was massive. A short, formal statement dropped from Buckingham Palace. But the impact was explosive. Andrew was stripped of everything, titles, honours, royal status, gone. No more HRH, no more privileges, no more protection that comes with being royal. But that wasn't even the biggest shock. The lease on Royal Lodge, terminated, completely cut off, not adjusted, not extended, terminated. Just like that. After 20 years, after a deal that was supposed to last 75 years, it was over. The Crown had made its move, and it didn't hold back. And Sarah Ferguson? Not even mentioned. Not one word. After living there for 15 years, after standing by Andrew publicly, after calling herself part of the tripod, she didn't even get a sentence in the announcement. Nothing offered, no plan, no support, no transition, just erased from the situation. Imagine that feeling. After everything, suddenly you're not even part of the conversation anymore, but it gets even more intense. Reports later claimed that the push to remove Andrew didn't come from King Charles alone. There were talks involving Prince William and even Andrew's own daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie. According to those claims, they told him directly to step away or risk damaging their own positions. Let that sink in. His own daughters. Now, not every detail can be fully confirmed, but one thing is clear. The family had made a decision, and it was final. Andrew was out, and Ferguson had nowhere left to stand. Then the countdown began. At first, they were given a deadline, January 25th, 2026. But that date came and went, and they were still inside. And this is where everything stops being just royal drama and starts feeling real. Because Andrew still had somewhere to go, a smaller home at Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate. Not as grand, not even close, but still a place to land. Sarah Ferguson, she had nothing. She once owned a London townhouse worth over £4 million, a solid backup plan, a safety net, but she sold it in 2025, the exact same year everything started collapsing. Let that hit. She sold the only property she truly owned right before losing access to Royal Lodge. No backup, no second home, no clear next step. Just a woman who once lived inside one of the most powerful estates in the country, now facing a future with nowhere certain to go. The palace had already started tightening the pressure on Andrew, and that left one big question hanging in the air. Where was Sarah Ferguson supposed to go now? The walls were closing in fast. And for the first time in years, there was no safety net waiting for her. Her daughters tried to help, but even that had limits. Princess Beatrice had her place in the Cotswolds, while Princess Eugenie was splitting her life between Portugal and Kensington Palace. Sounds comfortable, right? Not quite. Neither home was built to take in a long-term guest under that kind of pressure, and more importantly, neither situation offered anything permanent. Behind the scenes, insiders were already saying it out loud. Ferguson had nowhere to go. One source didn't sugarcoat it at all. They called her homeless. Let that sink in. A woman who lived for 20 years inside a 30-room royal mansion was now being described with that word, and things got even more tense when reports came out that she had been asking about Adelaide Cottage, the former home of Prince William and Catherine. That move alone raised alarms inside the palace. Advisors immediately saw the risk. With her past connections under scrutiny, the growing public criticism, and questions around royal spending, giving her another grace and favour home would have been a disaster. The answer? A firm no. No second chances this time. And while all of this was happening, her professional world wasn't just struggling, it was collapsing completely. For years after her divorce, Sarah Ferguson had been trying to rebuild something real. A brand, a career, a reason for people to pay attention beyond royal headlines. She wrote children's books. She worked on campaigns. She supported charities and launched business ventures. She was trying to stay relevant, but after the October 2025 announcement, everything started falling apart, fast. 6 companies connected to her were being dissolved. Not 1, not 2, 6, each one quietly shutting down like pieces of a bigger collapse. Her charity, Sarah's Trust, also announced it would close for the foreseeable future, and the reason? Carefully worded but clear. Her public image had taken a serious hit. Think about that. When even your own charity steps back because your name is becoming a risk, you know things have gone bad. And it didn't stop there. Major organisations that once worked with her started pulling away, quietly but completely. Groups like the Teenage Cancer Trust and the British Heart Foundation removed her as patron. No announcements, no drama. They just erased her name and moved forward. That silence spoke louder than anything else. It wasn't loud, but it was powerful. The message was clear. She had become too controversial to be connected to. Even former royal advisors reportedly told her straight, step out of the spotlight, get a regular job, and accept that rebuilding a public image might not happen anytime soon. There were even talks that she considered writing a tell-all book to bring in money, but that idea didn't go far, because everyone knew the fallout could be massive. By the time the final days at Royal Lodge were getting close, Sarah Ferguson was facing a reality she hadn't seen in decades. No steady income, no platform, no official role, no active charity, no title, and no home. And then came the moment that made everything even heavier. January 2026. The United States Department of Justice released millions of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein's case. We're talking over 3 million pages, and inside those pages were emails. Some of them included Sarah Ferguson's name. For years, she had described her connection to Epstein as a gigantic mistake, just one bad decision, something she regretted and moved on from. That was the story. But the emails painted a more complicated picture. In some messages, reportedly signed by her, the tone sounded very familiar. She referred to him as a brother I have always wished for, not distant, not formal, personal. In another message, she wrote, I am at your service, just marry me, which appeared tied to discussions about helping manage properties in exchange for financial support. That kind of language raised serious questions. It didn't sound like a one-time mistake. It sounded like a deeper connection that lasted longer than people were told. And then came one of the most talked-about details. A 2009 email mentioned plans for a lunch meeting in Miami with Epstein and noted that her daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, would be there too. This detail caught attention quickly, especially because it came after Epstein had already been convicted of serious crimes. The public reaction was strong and immediate, and it didn't end there. Another email from 2011 reportedly showed Ferguson apologizing to Epstein for distancing herself publicly. In it, she described him as a steadfast, generous, and supreme friend. She even said she had been bedridden with fear over speaking out against him. That statement raised even more questions, because it didn't match the earlier claim that he was just a mistake. There were also reports suggesting Epstein had helped with some of her personal debts, something that had already been public knowledge in the past. That financial connection added another layer to the situation. Her spokesperson responded briefly. She expressed regret and said her thoughts were with those affected. But for many people, that response didn't feel like enough. And then she disappeared. This is where the story takes a turn that feels almost unreal. Sarah Ferguson didn't leave Royal Lodge alongside Andrew. She didn't wait for the official deadline. She didn't give a farewell message or make any public statement. According to reports, the last confirmed sighting of her at Royal Lodge was back in September 2025, months before everything exploded publicly. She was seen getting into a car, face turned away from cameras, destination unknown, and after that, nothing. No return, no follow-up, no explanation. Think about that timing. September 2025 was the same period when King Charles was reportedly preparing the announcement that would later strip Andrew of his titles. So the question becomes impossible to ignore. Was it just coincidence, or did she know what was coming? Did someone warn her early? Or did she read the situation perfectly and decide to step away before things got worse? Her last social media post also came that same month, September 2025. After that, complete silence. No updates, no interviews, no appearances, no events, nothing. She didn't make noise, she just vanished quietly. And then came February 3rd, 2026. That was the night Andrew finally left Royal Lodge, alone. No farewell, no public send-off, no cameras waiting outside. After 20 years in one of the most prestigious royal homes, he walked away quietly under the cover of darkness. His destination, Wood Farm, a much smaller home on the Sandringham estate. 2 reception rooms, a kitchen, simple compared to what he had before, but still something. His world had clearly changed. Royal commentator Jenny Bond described it as more than just a move. She called it a formal exile. And honestly, that description hit hard. Because when someone is truly pushed out, there are no ceremonies, no celebrations, no recognition. They just disappear from the center of everything. But what happened next took things even further. On February 19th, 2026, his 66th birthday, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was arrested. Yes, arrested. On his birthday. Authorities arrived at his temporary home on the Sandringham estate, and just like that, the story took another shocking turn. And just like that, everything flipped in an instant. He was taken into custody on suspicion of misconduct in public office, and this wasn't something small or easy to brush off. This was serious, heavy, and loaded with consequences. The allegation hit hard, claiming that while serving as the UK's Special Representative for International Trade and Investment, Andrew had shared sensitive trade documents with Jeffrey Epstein. That kind of accusation doesn't just stay in headlines, it shakes trust at the highest level and puts everything under a microscope. And if it ever reached a conviction, the outcome wouldn't just be damaging. It could mean a lifetime behind bars, a complete collapse of everything tied to his name. He was held at Elston Police Station for around 11 hours before being released without charge. But that didn't mean he was cleared, not even close. It simply meant the investigation is still alive, still active, still building behind the scenes. And the arrest itself? That already crossed into history. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor became the first senior British royal in modern times to be arrested, and people couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Some commentators even reached back nearly 4 centuries, pointing to King Charles I, just to find anything that felt remotely similar. King Charles released a short statement expressing his deepest concern, but after that, everything went quiet. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie chose not to comment at all, staying silent while the situation kept escalating. And then attention shifted, because Sarah Ferguson was nowhere near any of it. While everything was unfolding in Norfolk, reports placed her in the French Alps, moving quietly, visiting friends, far from the chaos. Then suddenly she appeared in the United Arab Emirates, spotted at the Art Basel Fair in Doha, Qatar, alongside Princess Eugenie, who was working there as a gallery director. And that's where the optics started to hit different. Her ex-husband is being arrested, Royal Lodge sitting empty after 20 years of shared history, and she's at a high-profile art event on the other side of the world. People saw that contrast instantly, and they talked about it non-stop. Because when you really think about it, the timing raises questions. Legal sources started suggesting that if, and when, she returned to the UK, Thames Valley Police might want to speak with her too, especially about her connections to Andrew and her own documented ties to Epstein. That kind of speculation doesn't just fade away, it grows louder. One royal expert speaking to Fox News Digital described the situation as shameful, even going as far as to suggest she consider leaving the UK altogether. Whether that was just strong opinion or something more serious behind the scenes, nobody could say for sure, but it added serious weight to an already tense situation. And here's where things start to feel even more layered. The UAE has a reputation, quiet but well known, for being a place where high-profile figures can stay out of reach while dealing with complicated legal issues. It's not your typical extradition setup, and people know that. So naturally, speculation started building fast. Was Ferguson's presence there just coincidence, or something more strategic? Was it timing, or was it intentional? Nobody had clear answers, but once those questions start, they don't stop easily. Now fast forward to spring 2026, and look at where Sarah Ferguson stands, because it paints a picture that's hard to ignore. She has no permanent home. Royal Lodge, closed to her. The London townhouse, sold. Her daughters can offer her a place to stay, sure, but that's temporary, not a long-term life, not independence. She reportedly asked for Adelaide Cottage, hoping for some form of stability, and the palace reportedly said no, quickly and firmly. Her professional life has taken a major hit too. 6 companies dissolved, her charity shut down, and major organisations that once backed her have completely stepped away. These aren't small setbacks. This is a full breakdown of the structure she once relied on. Even former aides, people who used to stand beside her, are now quietly advising her to step away from the spotlight completely and consider living a more regular life. That shift alone speaks volumes. And when it comes to her royal standing, the situation is even tougher. No HRH, no official duties, no active role, no real platform left to build influence or income. At 66 years old, she's now tied to one of the most damaging scandals in modern royal history, and those closest to her are reportedly saying something that hits hard. Public redemption just isn't available right now. Not impossible forever, but definitely not in this moment. Not with everything still fresh. And yet, here's the part that really catches people off guard. Despite everything, sources claim she still believes she deserves a royal residence. Not just a place to stay, but something tied to status. Something that reflects her past position. She's even reportedly compared her situation to Princess Diana, arguing that she deserves the same kind of grace and favourable treatment. That comparison alone had people raising eyebrows instantly, because insiders, and the palace, see it very differently. Diana, whatever challenges she faced, was never connected to Jeffrey Epstein. She was never named in Department of Justice documents, never tied into that narrative, never placed in that kind of spotlight. So when that comparison gets made, it doesn't hold up. It breaks under scrutiny. And the palace knows that even acknowledging that argument would open doors, they have no interest in opening. Which brings everything back to one powerful detail: the silence. The royal family hasn't just been quiet, they've been deliberately silent. When Andrew lost his titles, Ferguson wasn't mentioned. When he left Royal Lodge, there was no statement. When he was arrested, the response was just one line: deepest concern. And when Ferguson disappeared from public life, nothing at all. That silence isn't random, it's calculated, because the moment they say anything, even one sentence, it opens the door to questions they don't want to answer, questions about what they knew and when they knew it, questions about why Ferguson was allowed to stay at Royal Lodge for 15 years after the divorce, questions about whether that co-parenting arrangement was really just about the children, or something deeper, something more complicated. And then come the bigger questions, the ones that don't go away. Questions about Epstein, about connections, about whether anyone inside the palace truly understood the full extent of those relationships. So instead of stepping into that storm, they've chosen silence, and that silence sends a clear message. They're moving forward, and they're leaving this behind. But for Sarah Ferguson, none of this is behind her. Wherever she is right now, whether it's somewhere in the Gulf, somewhere in Europe, or quietly staying with friends, she carries all of it with her. The history, the headlines, the documents, the questions. Royal Lodge may be empty now, lights off, doors shut, but what happened there hasn't disappeared. Because this story isn't just about one person, it's about what happens when loyalty, power, and proximity collide in the worst way possible. It's about the cost of staying close to situations that slowly spiral out of control until there's no way to separate yourself from the fallout. And that kind of story doesn't just fade, it sticks, it lingers, it keeps coming back. Sarah Ferguson once rebuilt her life at Royal Lodge after one of the most public divorces imaginable, creating stability through what she called a tripod of strength and co-parenting. For years, it worked. She had a home, a purpose, a presence in the public eye. She was photographed, interviewed, taken seriously again. But then, slowly, and then all at once, it all unraveled. The Epstein scandal didn't just take Andrew's career, it pulled everything connected to him down piece by piece. His title, his home, his position, and along with that, Ferguson's world began to collapse too. Not in one dramatic moment, not in one single headline, but in a steady, relentless series of events that stripped everything away. Her final moments at Royal Lodge weren't captured. No cameras waiting, no farewell speech, no closing ceremony. Just a quiet exit, driven away in a car, her face hidden from view. The gates closing behind her like the end of something that once felt permanent. And just like that, the palace moved on, without pause, without hesitation. And now the question hangs there, impossible to ignore. Can she come back from this? Can she rebuild something new, something people are willing to accept? Or are the connections, the documents, and the history simply too heavy to move past? Because history shows that people can recover, but it also shows that some ties are too deep, some situations too complicated, and some revelations too strong to simply move on from like nothing happened. And right now, that's where this story stands. Unfinished, unresolved, and still unfolding. The mansion is empty, the gates are locked, and Sarah Ferguson has stepped out of sight, but not out of the conversation. And if you've been following all of this, then you already know this story doesn't just end here. It keeps evolving, new angles keep coming out, and the bigger picture keeps getting clearer over time. So if you've got thoughts on where this could go next, or how this all plays out, feel free to drop them. This is one of those stories where every perspective adds something, and if you want to stay in the loop as things develop, just stick around, because there's definitely more to come, and this situation is far from finished.